All right, so we are kicking off a very special August at Reserve Seating. We're going to be doing nothing but 30th anniversaries of summer 1993 movies. Summer 93 was really big for me. It was all about grunge alternative music. It was all about movies and theaters and just seeing as many as I could. It was about going to the pool. It was about playing baseball. I was like really like in my peak of little league dumb right then.
What was
Like I
your
was just
position?
hitting everything.
What was your position? What'd you play?
I was all over the place. They put me in like the liability positions or
Oh,
like the low liability
yeah.
positions. So like second base, third
Left field.
base.
They misjudged you. They didn't understand.
Oh, I think they judged me pretty well. So we are going to kick off this month with The Firm, based off of the 1991 novel written by John Grisham. It was his second novel. It was his first novel to get a lot of acclaim
Okay.
and do really well. His first one was A Time to Kill, and apparently that did well because people read The Firm, so they went back to read A Time
Uh,
to Kill.
cool.
So, but The Firm was the first film adaptation of any of his books. It was a 1991 novel. It quickly got adapted because the movie came out obviously in summer of 93.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time it being like pretty ubiquitous. Like you would go to the pool and like all the dads or moms were reading The Firm on their beach chairs and stuff like that. And then I went to go see it with my folks and I did not understand it at all. And I remember being very frustrated as an 11-year-old. And for this watch, I watched it with my parents. And
Nice.
my mom wanted to give her review. So I will briefly say that
Please.
um, Mrs. Risky said that the movie holds up and that she much prefers it to the current Tom Cruise movies.
Oh, all right. All right. Any
So
reason why?
I don't know. I need to ask her,
All right. All right.
but she was very excited to give her take. So
That's
hi mom. I
we
just wanted
welcome it
to.
here. We welcome it
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
Mrs. Risky, if you'd like to elaborate on that, please in the comments below, please go ahead and elaborate. So I came to this late. I'm fairly certain I watched the firm for the first time in the last year or two, maybe.
Okay.
I'm remembering time is sort of a whatever now. It's a big old mess of goop, so I have no idea when things happened or barely who they
Mhm.
happened to. But I love this movie. The
Yeah.
firm rules. It is and I've stolen this phrase from you over and over again. And I will continue to probably for the rest of my life, but it is so movie. It is so movie. The firm is so
Yeah.
movie. If you're all right, here, we'll put it this way, folks. Good. We talked last week about how good movies are right now. We got Barbenheimer, we got Oppenheimer and Barbie together to make, I guess it's
Just
just
those
two
two.
movies
Just
then.
just those two.
But if you've been sort of inundated with the sort of obligational sludge that's been coming out of Hollywood for the last, I don't know, 5, 6 years or so, and you're
Sure.
done with Marvel and you're done with everything else, watch The Firm. The Firm will reinvigorate your love of movies. It is a capital M movie in an old school way that just hits every beat you want a movie to make. If you remember movies from the 80s and 90s, if you were around when they were coming out, it is just the best form of old fashioned, big adult thriller, people talking in rooms movie, and it rules.
So I have a question for you before I kind of give my
Yeah.
opinion now. It's changed clearly since I was 11 years old, but
Right.
do you find the movie confusing?
I don't know that I call it confusing because we have the Tom Cruise audience surrogate character, and he's kind of just there. And in as much as we trust him to understand stuff, as much as we need to understand stuff, as with Tom Cruise's, speaking of modern Tom Cruise films, as with Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, I don't know what the hell's going on. But if Tom Cruise knows what's going on, then I feel
Yeah.
comfortable. I'm in good hands.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting, like usually they say that, you can make a bad movie from a good screenplay,
Yeah.
but you can't make a good movie from a bad screenplay.
Okay.
And I don't think this is a bad screenplay because there's a lot of chewy dialogue scenes and the story's just interesting.
Mhm.
But I think that there's a lot of sections where I it's kind of an amazing feat where I know the general outlines of what's going on,
Yeah.
but I don't really understand what he's doing for like a good hour of how he's going to accomplish his goal. But then they throw you like a little bit of a life raft where they're just like, they have the conversation with him and one of his legitimate clients about like mail fraud and billing. And then like they set that up for the ending when he's talking to Paul Sorvino and Joe Verdarelli and stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh, okay, like the details in between, I didn't really need to know about like why he was doing what he was doing in relation to Ed Harris's FBI character, or why he was doing what he was doing in relation to, all of the, like, I swear, like Holly Hunter, it's like this is the first performance anyone's ever had of mostly Xeroxing
Yeah.
paper.
But no, I totally, I'm with you on that. But again, I go back to what I said about like, I don't need to know every nook and cranny of this. It's one of those cat and mouse thrillers based on obviously this is probably a 400-page airport paperback novel that is more interested in the energy than plot cohesion. Um,
Yeah.
and it works for me. I think that understanding that Gene Hackman's character, and there's sort of machinations there, and there's Hal Holbrook's character, and he's sort of, he's doing his thing. He's sort of nefarious. There's enough like character types in the movie to sort of keep me
Yeah.
balanced. As I know, like, okay, Cruz is the young plucky protagonist. There's the mentor character who we can't quite trust. There's the boss who's very clearly not with it. There's the lawman who's trying to get it. Like all of those archetypes are there. So even if I
Yeah.
don't understand all the mail fraud nonsense, I'm still very well anchored in the storytelling, which is, I mean, Sidney Pollack directs this film and directs shit out of it. And it's amazing that he's
He
able to
really does. Yeah.
keep this like on the up and up, like all the plates spinning and all that without feeling like you're overwhelmed.
There's like so many like little pleasures in this
Oh,
movie where
so much.
like Gene Hackman was born to say sunny caps on film. Um
100%.
I think his name is David Grussin.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dave Grussin, who did the score of this movie. He did so many scores like leading up to this. He was like really prominent or prolific in the 70s and 80s with movies like Reds, and
Yeah.
he even did Goonies and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like this was the score that he had in him that he was burning to play, and it's so jaunty and fun, and it makes what could be sort of like a soggy bread bowl type of movie into like a really engaging thriller.
That's what I'm saying when I talk about this being so movie, because it is, because
Yeah,
like, you're in those parts where they're just in rooms talking and filing paperwork, but you hear that piano, and I love to think that he may have, like, isn't it Carpenter that talks about like that he wrote the Halloween score just kind of watching the movie and tinkering with the
it
piano?
does feel like that. Yeah,
Feels
yeah.
like he's just playing along and adding tonality to each scene, and that's what I love about it. That's why if you're confused, you've got a sort of a jaunty, upbeat, kind of poppy keyboard song in a major key, like, oh, this is good. He's like doing his work. He's doing well with the business. And then dun dun dun, you get that sort of dramatic stuff where you're like, okay, something's not wrong now. And then you even get the little twinkling on the high keys there with the thriller elements. I love the score. We were texting back and forth about this, and I was like, this piano just makes it. It's just so much fun. And it's part of the sort of the old fashioned nature of the movie that I just love so much.
Yeah, and I think the Cruise performance is really good too, because like this is my like he has a protege mentor relationship with Gene Hackman in the movie. I think it works better than some of the like one of the previous ones he did in a movie was I guess he had it with like Duvall and Days of Thunder, but the one I'm thinking of is like him and Paul Newman in Color of Money. And I think this one's like just a really good pairing. I love that Cruise's sort of um it's kind of like a play on his persona because he kind of was like a yuppie actor, and this is sort of like totally, the working class guy trying to get the brass ring, and then kind of being so naive that he doesn't realize, all the dangerous inner workings of the firm that he's going into. But I like it because they make and maybe I'm just a sucker for this in movies in general, but like when the business offers you the big job with the car and with the house and with like
Mortgage
in
and
the
the
mortgage and the paying
car,
off your student loans and everything
nothing
like that,
student loans.
like it reminds me, it kind of taps into my like what is Shohei Ohtani gonna get this off season type of interest. So I really like this, he's our number one draft pick, like
Yeah,
they even say in the movie.
I
And
love
I'm
it.
just like,
Yeah.
ooh, number one draft pick.
But what I
Yeah.
like about that is Cruise at this time, I'm thinking like, A Few Good Men, or even like
Mhm.
uh what the hell is the movie where Dustin Hoffman is his brother?
Rain
Rain
Man.
Man. Where thinking about movies like that at the time where he's cocksure, like he's playing the up and coming young, like hotshot.
Yeah.
I like about this movie is he's not quite doing that. His character is like, I like the conversation he has with Gene Hackman about how he's a pragmatist, like he's not an idealist. Even
Mhm.
though he sort of reveals himself to be later, there's a little bit of that in there where he's kind of like, no, like we're here to make money, we're here to do this, we're here to make these transactions and all that. He eventually, very similarly to A Few Good Men, he gets into that headspace where it's like, no, I'm going to defend the law and I'm going to be a champion of the law. I'm not going to go down that road that you went down.
Yeah.
And like Jean Triplehorn has that line where she's like, he is you. Like I see you going that way if you hadn't changed your way. But I
Mhm.
like that sort of guides his performance. And I think that not having his IMDb in front of me where I can really see the track of all of his roles at the time, I do think that's a little bit of, it feels like him trying to do something different, and maybe Pollock as an old master kind of pulling him and saying like, Tom, like give me something a little bit more layered, give me something, not just, you're not just shooting off the finger guns and sliding across the dining room floor and all that. You're
Yeah.
doing something that's a little bit more mannered and a little bit more layered and a little bit more internal, which I think totally pays off when we get to like Eyes Wide Shut and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I just think this is really interesting. Cruise performance. It's like a little bit different than what he's doing. Again, not having his IMDb in front of me, I'm sure you might be
Yeah.
thinking, there's other movies where he does that too at this time. But just off the top of my head, thinking about it as this performance being maybe dipping his toe, into a little bit of a different persona.
I also like that in a way that like the Fablemans kind of inform some of previous Spielberg movies when you rewatch them. I kind of have this with The Firm too, where I'm watching like what I know about Cruise with like Mission Impossible and with that series and everything like that, and his just laser focus.
Mhm.
Um, I see that now in The Firm and in Born on the Fourth of July. I kind of always did with Born on the Fourth of July, but even with The Firm, where it's like he's so caffeinated and he's so like amped, and I love like even in the scene where they're wooing him and they have like the barbecue and stuff like that, he's just like shaking people's hands. He's like, and then he's like, there's a scene where this is such a small, stupid thing that only I would notice. Like, there's a scene where he like eats ribs, and I've never seen anybody like eat a rib quite like he's eating a rib. It's like this will be his last rib.
Yeah. Part of that's Tom Cruise. Part of that's a character, and part of it's also like, does Tom Cruise know what ribs are? Does he know? Do you think he eats ribs?
He's just like ready to go. Like he's just like these are the best ribs because
Yeah.
I'm here, and like
Well, it's like that. It's like that thing where, like, anytime you see Tom Cruise in a scene where he's laughing with other human beings, he's laughing as though he's never actually laughed with other human beings before. Like,
that's like Ron DeSantis.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
um,
Um,
yeah, yeah, fuck that guy. Seriously. Yeah, Gene Hackman. I love that his character basically, it's like, well, I'm clocking out on Wednesday, Cayman Islands. Like,
I love his casual Cayman Island wear. It was amazing. He walks around that resort like he's there every other weekend. Like, you know what I mean? They all the waiters know his name.
I mean, there's so much to talk about this movie. I just think
Yeah.
like so many of the performances just have great moments. Like,
Should we talk Brimley for a second?
oh my God, is Brimley good in this? Like,
Brimley's
if I were doing like a 2K replay, even though this is 93, like Scene Stealer, Wilford Brimley. No, I like that there's the gauntlet of women to
yeah.
have affairs with at the Cayman Islands, where it's just like, well, he might not go for the double date, so we better set up another one on the beach.
It's like the first Mission Impossible movie where there's all the agents stationed around the party, where it's like, which one is he going to go for? Any movie that can just drop Busey on you an hour and 15 minutes in, and he can just
Yeah,
sit at a desk and rant, is amazing.
I don't know why I didn't like compute that Busey went to jail for statutory rape, and we're still supposed to be like, what a cut up.
Again,
like
going back to
like the 90s were interesting.
David Strathairn sort of popping in and out of a Southern accent. Sometimes he's got one, sometimes he doesn't. I don't know if you noticed that too.
He's working his way up to Dolores Claiborne.
He's
I mean,
working.
this movie makes me sad that Gene Triplehorn didn't have a much bigger career.
And that's the bigger, I think that's the big thing out of this. Because was watching her and thinking like, man, where does she go next? And then I flip it open and I'm like, ah, man, she didn't go where she should have.
No, I mean, she popped up and stuff. She was like in Waterworld Until There Was You and stuff like that. But it seemed like they kind of just
Could
they
have had,
lost interest in her as a lead after a while. And
should be like the Jodie Foster, Holly Hunter,
yeah,
Helen Hunt type 90s career.
I like her. I mean, controversial statement because I know she's beloved and she was nominated for an Oscar for this. I much prefer her to Holly Hunter. So, John Grisham movies.
Yes.
Are you a fan? And what are some of your favorites?
All right, let's look. All right, The Chamber I've never seen.
Not good.
Not good. The Client, A+.
Pretty good. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah. A Painted House.
A Painted House. I don't know that one.
Never seen that. The Pelican Brief.
Ugh, boring.
Never seen it.
It's the lesser of the 293 Grishams.
Yeah. The Rainmaker.
Awesome. It's the best one.
Totally. Yeah. The Runaway Jury.
It's fun. It's really entertaining.
I don't think I've ever seen it. And then Skipping Christmas.
I need to see it. I've watched like 20
it.
minutes of it. It's called Surviving Christmas as a movie.
Right.
And then A Time to Kill was one that I think that probably won't date very well or it will date uncomfortably well. Depending on.
I've definitely seen it, but I have to go back and watch it.
I remember that being like one of the sweatiest movies I've ever seen in my life.
To go back to The Firm for a second, I love the sort of mid 40s, like kind of like middle-aged male energy where they're all wearing like wool coats and like I think I said to you in a text like you could smell the Brute cologne from like through the screen. Like I just love the energy of like dudes in suits in rooms and they're like mahogany. Like I just love the aesthetic of the movie. It's just and they're all like playing with fax machines and stuff in a way where they're not entirely sure it makes sense. So it just rules. It's just so good.
You touched on something I'm glad that you did because my God, is it wonderful to watch a pre-smartphone thriller. Like and they used computers, but like it was, not the internet and stuff like that. It was just so interesting that it's like we gotta bust them, but I have to make thousands of copies.
I have to make thousands of copies and hide them strategically. And any movie where like a computer is magic is just great. Any 90s movie where a computer can just a screenwriter runs into a dead end and they're like, well, he was on the computer. He found it on the computer. That's what they did for him. Yeah. And the girls go to the islands and they're moving boxes of paperwork around. All that today would be on a smartphone. It would all be like, oh, sending the files now, But it's so much better when you see Holly Hunter tow in a box full of file folders around and hiding in hotel rooms with Gene Triplehorn, like going through the files and then putting them back before Gene Hackman wakes up. It rules.
Yeah. Gene Hackman offers Tom Cruise a Red Stripe beer.
Yes.
I've had Red Stripe beer. It's really bad. So I have an idea for next week.
Ooh.
I was going through the newspaper ads for The Firm, as I'm wont to do.
Sure, like you do.
And maybe a month into the run of The Firm, they did that great thing they do in the 90s where they're like, come see the sneak preview and stay as our guest for The Firm.
Got it.
And the sneak preview was for Searching for Bobby Fischer, which is one of Rob's choices.
My choice. This month. For this month. Summer Thrills.
Summer Thrills.
August.
Summer Thrills.
Parks. Lawrence Fishburne.
Mm-hmm. Montaigne. Cinema. Kingsley.
A movie that I was obsessed with and still quote all the time. And I have not rewatched it in years, and I'm very excited for this.
I've seen it on cable a handful of times, but I don't have a huge, strong memory of it, so I'm very excited to rewatch it. If you can, please throw up the poster right here, because I remember that this poster was always on those mall directories where like on one side it was an ad and on the other side it would tell you where the stores are inside a shopping mall.
Right.
And I was always like, oh, is this some missing kid movie?
Yeah, he looks like a lost kid on it. Yep.
It's I don't know what they were thinking when they like marketed this movie, because you could only look at that and be like, oh, it's a missing kid movie. It's not about chess. Unless you know Bobby Fischer, I guess.
We will talk about Searching for Bobby Fischer next week.
I'm very excited. And until next time, this summer has returned. Maybe.
Sure.
These seats are reserved. Fine. We'll do it the old way. These seats are reserved.
All right, bye.
Bye.